All right, hi everybody. My name's Dougherty, and I'm here today to talk about a project that I'm working on with a friend of mine, Dan Sullivan. And let's see, turn this on. This is called Space Frame, and more generally, we think about it as redesigning design. So to top it, I want to do a little introduction, and this is my firm, Dougherty and Dougherty Architects. We're located in Oakland, small branch office of a larger firm. Just really quickly want to show some of the work that we've done. I feel like it's kind of necessary in the beginning of the production. This is a construction time lapse of that last project. It's going to be finished in March, and that's Dougherty and Dougherty. It's not really what I want to talk about today. So I want to get into is talking about design and talking about kind of why we're all in architecture. And at some point, this was you, and you were kind of looking around at your environment, and you thought, oh, okay, built environment. This is pretty cool stuff. You know, if you're in architecture, and maybe I should do this for a living. And so take the next logical step, right? You head to architecture school, and you show up, and you're kind of working on some cool projects, and you're thinking, this is interesting. Learning design, you've got some cool people that are around, and they're kind of giving you great ideas, and you're talking to friends, and you're collaborating, and it's all this kind of cool stuff. You go to these crits, your ego gets totally bruised, but you're meeting some really interesting people. They sit there and you're talking, you're having these conversations, and you feel like, wow, I'm really learning some great skills. I can really head out there and do some awesome stuff. So you graduate, you're pretty psyched about that. You pick up a copy of Design Like You Give a Damn, because you really want to do great stuff, and you head out. When I graduated from Berkeley with an MArch in 2006, not that long ago, I definitely have these aspirations of like, wow, I learned so much. I came into architecture from economics originally, so hadn't studied it. It was a huge learning process, and by the time I graduated, I'm like, this is really amazing stuff. And then you enter what I would call the grind. You show up, looks kind of like studio, like this is pretty cool. You got a job, you got a boss. Hopefully he or she is pretty cool. And then things maybe start to go a little haywire, and it's like, whoa, I'm not quite doing the same stuff. Now it's a lot of paperwork, and maybe you're working on little pieces of big projects, or you're working on kind of a whole small project, but either way, you're like, this isn't really the bill of goods that was sold to me in school, and things are different. It's pretty solitary. It's like, where are my design crits? Maybe you're working for a great firm, and they do have design crits or something like that. But maybe you even start your own office, but you get there and you're like, whoa, I don't really know everything that I needed to know, and I feel pretty alone, and who do I turn to for feedback? And this isn't even getting into things like licensure requirements and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, you're like, this isn't what I signed up for. And I don't know if you've all seen Architects, but it's a great read if you haven't. And for me, I graduated, like I said, in 2006, and kind of went out there into the workforce, and was really psyched about finding a job, and like, I get to do this in practice and actually build buildings, and I wanted to work for a big office. I worked in the East Bay. Actually ended up at like a kind of medium-sized office. It turned out being a great place. I was working on a kind of medium-sized project, took it from start to finish, and after that I was able to actually manage my own project. So it was pretty cool, but my colleagues weren't all so lucky. They had very little control over what they were working on. And honestly, the hardest part for me, and I don't know about you, but was to train myself to sit there in a quiet room, sitting still at a desk for minimum 8 hours a day. I was like, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life? So, I want to go behind the scenes and kind of see why this is happening. So you can imagine that these dots are all firms. This is just kind of the model as we're thinking about it right now. Firms of different sizes, and they're expending a lot of energy, just kind of moving around. And you can think of this moving around as overhead. So maybe it's, in-house like IT and HR issues, or, maybe it's business development, just moving around trying to get work. And then, suddenly these projects kind of show up, and you hope that you're positioned correctly to get these projects. You're trying to put yourself in the right position. You're trying to kind of grab them, and you grab them and you pump them out, and you grab them and you pump them out. And some firms kind of show up, and maybe they make it happen. Other firms disappear. Firms grow and firms shrink. And when I started working at Dougherty and Dougherty, it's an established business. My parents actually started it 33 years ago, so I was pretty lucky. I had no idea the value of a portfolio. I thought, okay, I can come in here with good ideas and like just make it happen, and people will be like, yeah, do my project. It does not work like that, and that's some of the problems with our industry. So you show up and you have this portfolio, and then you say, okay, I've done this before, even though I personally haven't done this before. But, it's been done by our firm before, and you do have those resources, so there's some truth to that. But since starting this office, we've been doing pretty well, but I'm fighting every day to survive, and it's really tough, and I'm not necessarily doing the work that I want to be doing. So if we go back and we look at these dots again, take a moment to step back, there are some casualties. And at the end of the day, we're jockeying for position, and there are casualties of war. And these firms disappear, the people don't disappear. I mean, maybe they move to different professions, but they still have the same skill set. But they're just kind of left out there floating, and they're this kind of untapped resource of people. And I think the lesson for me is that we're all worth a lot less when we stand alone. And that by isolating ourselves, and it's kind of the way that our industry is set up, we're worth less in terms of the client's eyes and some of the problems that Stuart was talking about in terms of project management. I mean, that's stuff that we have let slip through our fingers. I was talking to somebody earlier about the idea of design thinking. I mean, what a missed opportunity for our profession. So, let's kind of get into the individual firm and see how this is working. As a kind of amateur economist, my undergrad degree is actually in economics and finance. I like to think about things in terms of incentives, and how those incentives influence our actions. And I'm sure that you've heard a lot about this in the financial crisis and things like that. So it's all about alignment of those incentives. So let's talk about the firm owner. His incentive is to find clients, right? Those clients pay him, and then he starts to staff up. And hopefully, if you're working for a good firm, his incentive is to do good projects also. As soon as he starts to find clients and staff up, he's got to hire more people. And these people are on something that we all call payroll. And if you've ever looked at the finances of the firm, you got payroll that's going out pretty consistently, no matter what you bring in, right? So at the end of the day, that means that the owner is going to price the salaries to market. You might think that your salary is based upon the value that you're inputting into the business, and it is in a way, relatively speaking, but any good firm owner is going to pay you the smallest amount possible to make you happy. I mean, and I'm not saying that they're trying to be really cheap, but they have every incentive to pay you as little as possible and have you be happy. And keep getting jobs, and you're staffing up, and you've got this payroll, and maybe there are little adjustments that happen, for kind of incentives, but you're not really that tied to the work that you're doing on a daily basis. You get a paycheck, and yeah, you can get fired or you can get a raise, but there's kind of this disconnect in incentives, and eventually he's got this big overhead and this payroll, and maybe he just chops his legs off, he gives them to the client, and he's like, I got to keep the doors open, and so at the end of the day, you end up with these people who are kind of unhappy, doing work, and this is if the firm isn't managed well, but or maybe it's managed well and it just happens. They're doing work that they don't necessarily enjoy, but they're kind of stuck there. And especially in this economy, there are huge costs to try and to move firms or something like that, which is really kind of your bargaining position as an employee. And this is the position that I call feeding the beast. So you set up this beast of this huge staff. You're like, yes, I've made it. I've got a big architecture firm, and then you got to take on a bunch of crappy projects for everybody to do to be able to keep paying them. I think at the end of the day, our fees are cut. We end up working our butts off. I mean, we all feel this right now. And people leave. Don't just leave the office. They go to other professions. So, my goal is to try to figure out a way to align our incentives with our goals for individuals. And I think there are a lot of opportunities to create something much more nimble that takes advantage of the connectivity of the 21st century. So let's look at the new model, at least as Dan and I are kind of proposing it. So this is us, and we've known each other for about 10 years, and for the last 5, we've been brainstorming, how can we work together? What can we do? And we've just kind of been having these conversations, how can we deliver design services differently? And we started to think about all these people that we're surrounded by, and kind of the many talents, that and the connections that we have, and all this kind of great energy that's out there. And what do we really want at the end of the day? Well, we want cool shit in our office, like fabrication equipment and these things that we didn't, that we had in school, but now we don't have. We want to set our own hours. And it's not that we want to work less or we don't want to work, but we want to feel connected to the living that we're making and the money that we're getting and the projects that we're doing, and we want to do it when we want to do it, and of course be collaborative, but we don't want to have to sit at a desk all day and feel like we have to appear busy. And really we want to feel good about what we do. And we kind of think more heads are better than one. We really have to find a way to create these connections. So how do we do that? So we go back to these dots. Think about these dots as individuals and not necessarily firms. Individuals with different skills and talents. And we think about ways that these individuals could kind of connect around projects. Maybe a project comes in and you get together and you form kind of a temporary larger entity. Or maybe you create your own project and you come together and form a temporary larger entity, and you kind of create this different flow and this different system where these projects are being created. Maybe some of them go out. Maybe some people stick together and kind of form a permanent entity. Maybe you come back apart, but you don't have that kind of feeding the beast mentality. And you can put together the best team for each project, and then ideally synergies happen and things you never would have thought of before until you were around these people. So specifically, we're thinking about kind of forming a space, a great space that's kind of founded on these different models. So we have Blue Bottle Coffee is kind of just an example to me of the great artisanal food movement and how these guys are doing things differently. It started in Temescal, but in Oakland now it's in Jack London Square. WeWork is a national kind of, you could call it a chain of co-working spaces for tech entrepreneurs. They have a space in Soma that you should really check out. It's amazing. Uptown Body and Fender, I just put that in there because they're also in Oakland, and they've redefined a body shop as being a gathering space and an art space. So Barbara Lee, our congresswoman, had her birthday there, which was pretty cool. And then Tech Shop in San Francisco, you may be familiar with. They actually have places all over now. They were just acquired by Autodesk. And they're all about kind of the maker movement and DIY and kind of really ramping that up and redefining that. So we're looking at Oakland specifically, and it's kind of follows what Sarah was talking about this great arts community in Oakland and kind of tapping into that. And we've been talking about co-locating with the next pop-up hood location in this area called Kono, Koreatown, Northgate, which has great kind of warehouse space availability. You're looking at getting something big with a roll-up door, 9,000 square feet, where we can all kind of come together, BART accessible, walkable community. And we're just kind of very preliminarily getting into the planning for the space, but looking at some kind of cafe space, informal areas to work, things like that. Some more formal areas, and then just kind of the equipment and shared kind of conference room and training room and all these kind of opportunities that we think would be able to take place in this place where we all kind of come together. And I think that the way that we see it differently than these other WeWork things and places like that is just kind of the magnitude of like-minded people in one space working together. And I really haven't seen anything like that. I would love to work in a space like that, planning on moving my office into here. And also just kind of the specificity of what's provided. I mean, we're architects and designers. We can't necessarily go work in a hacker space where they're using a laser cutter to cut chocolate chip cookies. And it's broken and things don't work and things aren't necessarily designed nicely. And Tech Shop is great, but it's really rough around the edges. So back to the dots and these different people. Talked a lot about the space that would kind of bring people together and create this kind of virtual, or create this kind of network that would allow for these opportunities to happen. And we have kind of a whole slew of programs that we think can come out of this and kind of allow everybody to do the work that they want to do and kind of have the career that they want to have. But I think that it's more than that also. And we're talking about kind of extending that network out. And what's the potential of that, where it becomes more than just a physical network? And you see things like this on ArcConnect is starting to get there. But where there are maybe different physical locations, and those physical locations are tied together. Maybe there are people outside of those physical locations, and having that kind of online interface where you can come together around projects. Maybe they can be international projects and things like that. So that's kind of where we're going, and we're hoping to take things. So calling it SpaceFrame, we're at spaceframe.us, so you can check us out there. And we're coming in fall of 2013. So I would love to get people's feedback, and if people want to be a part of it, let me know. Thank you.